It started with a video. Shocking, brutal, and in my eyes, an obscenity. As a veterinary physiotherapist, I knew what I was seeing wasn't just harsh, it was unacceptable. So I recorded my reaction, and like so many in the equestrian world, I waited to see what would happen next. The public outcry was fierce. The governing body had to respond. But was it enough? Now, in this podcast series, I break down the scandal, the reactions, and the resolutions that followed, tracing the journey from Olympic glory to the moment everything unravelled. This is Charlotte Dujardin, the scandal, the backlash, the consequences. I'm Caroline Lindsay, horsesaddlerider.com. Let's begin. In this episode, we dive into the headlines as the FEI takes action under continued intense scrutiny. Reading directly from the BBC and other leading equestrian publications, I trace the governing body's response and what these moves mean for the future of elite equestrian sport. Is the FEI making real change or just managing the optics? Let's find out. Welcome back. So now that we've been through Charlotte Dujardin's autobiography, I can now get on to the FEI updates and business. And they have made some major leaps, I would say, since I've been reading that autobiography. So we'll go through those. The first news story I wanted to present was from the BBC. So I'm delighted that, as well as the national press following this story of dressage horse abuse since the Olympics and the Charlotte Dujardin withdrawal, the BBC has kept it going too. So horse abuse sanctions strengthened after scandals. So what happened was on the 1st of October, the FEI committees met to discuss the way forward in the light of the Paris horse abuse scandals. And there was more than one. Punishments for those found to have abused horses have been strengthened by the body which governs equestrian sports globally. So yes, that's the FEI. And as I understand it, the FEI is not above the Olympics. It may seem at the moment that they're above the law of this UK land because the RSPCA have not stepped in immediately on this case surrounding Charlotte Dujardin. But we need to be clear about the hierarchy here. The FEI does not have all the power, but it does have a lot of power over its membership. So they can only deal with those who are registered with them. And this governs their regulated FEI competitions and also the training of horses. So the competitors don't necessarily have to be on the competition ground to be sanctioned. This applies to their whole conduct relating to their sport. So the FEI voted through amendments to regulations at its annual General Assembly in the United Arab Emirates, and they include increasing the length of bans handed out to any rider, owner, or team member found to have breached its standards for the ethical treatment of competition horses. So since the scandal broke, I wasn't advocating for stronger sanctions because I believe an abuser is an abuser. So the way forward is to move their cheese, i.e. get the prizes from beyond their reach by facilitating ethical riders to enter the sport, i.e. those that ride in snaffle bits. And also that the marking should reflect ethical training. Top-end horse abuse can now be punished by a ban of between 3 and 10 years, up from between 2 and 5, while the tariff for maximum level abuse is between 10 years and life. Now, in my view, I believe that had Charlotte Dujardin's case gone through the RSPCA, she would have got a 10-year ban. So is it that the FEI is seeking to sanction her and other riders recently flagged up for dressage horse abuse, serious dressage horse abuse? Is it that they feel that their existing sanctions, bans, were not enough? But I would say, to me, looking at this situation, I think they want to apply 10 years for Charlotte Dujardin. It's not just the horse abuse, it's the bringing the sport into disrepute, and she's done that massively. And also, I had concerns about that rider, the what we believe to be 19 years old, who was seated on that horse that did not belong to Charlotte Dujardin. We're not sure of the full details yet, but to attack a horse, to brutalize a horse in that way, big, strong dressage horse, that rider, as I see it, was put in serious, grave danger by Charlotte Dujardin. And it just should not have happened. She should have known better. So I think the FEI should use the toughest sanctions for that situation. It didn't happen in a competition. It didn't happen while warming up. It didn't happen to her own horse. So I think she's in for a 10-year ban, and I think the RSPCA would not need to step in and take over this situation if the FEI applies a 10-year ban. It could be lifetime, but as this is the first time anything of this nature has come to light, I think she'll get a 10. And I think that's why the FEI are doing that now. They've got to stamp out this horse abuse. As I said earlier, I don't think this will necessarily deal with those individuals, but it will act as something of a deterrent. It might keep the abusers out of the sport, but I think that what will keep them out is that the prizes, the prestige, being won by ethical riders. The sanction for horse abuse, which the FEI deems low end, has risen from a ban of up to 3 months to up to 6 months. So Charlotte got a ban of 6 months pending investigation. We'll look at the detail of that in a moment. But she got 6 months, which shows or demonstrates that this was not a low-end case. While the mid-range sanction has shifted up from between 3 months and 2 years to between 6 months and 3 years. I don't think it's mid-range either. I think she's committed a series of FEI breaches of the rules. And yeah, it's an unusual case because other riders have been sanctioned for horse abuse, but Charlotte seems to have gone a couple of steps further in this instance. The changes which come into effect on the 1st of January have been made following a series of abuse scandals in equestrian sports in recent years. Well, it would appear that this has been accelerated, these changes. And is it a coincidence that these will be in place just when they are due to deal with Charlotte Dujardin and the others who have outstanding cases with them? The most prominent controversy featured 3-time Team GB Olympic gold medalist Charlotte Dujardin, who was barred from taking part in dressage events at this year's Games in Paris after a video of her excessively whipping a horse was shared online. So there is slight confusion about the original story behind this ban. Did she fall or was she pushed? But I will look at that directly from the FEI website in a moment. The 39-year-old lost the majority of her sponsorships in the aftermath and has not made any public comment since publishing an apology for the incident on social media. I have seen a few comments from her mother there, including one which I have made a video about, where she was attempting to sell her tickets for the prize-giving ceremony at the Olympics. Bad taste and insensitive as I see it. Dujardin is the subject of an ongoing disciplinary investigation by the FEI, who suspended her from competition in July. Again, that requires clarifying. The amended rules also include the implementation of sanctions for witness intimidation and retaliation for the first time. So what that means is that anyone coming forward with evidence should feel safe to do so. It is, to me, ridiculous that in these days of political correctness and entitlement, that an abuser should be protected from what they might term as harassment just because somebody has a concern about something they are doing. So it'll be interesting to read that. Meanwhile, punishment for bringing the FEI and/or equestrian sport into disrepute, which I mentioned earlier, has also been raised from a previous maximum of 1 year to between 5 years and life. There is no doubt that Charlotte Dujardin has brought the sport into disrepute. So again, I think her minimum is 5 years there. Alterations to anti-doping rules mean that the FEI is entitled to request information about the whereabouts of any horse registered with the organisation from its trainers and owners, and that horses will be subject to out-of-competition doping tests. So yes, they're making their doping rules more robust and potentially easier to identify the abusers. Samples from the hair and skin of horses can now also be included in anti-doping tests, in addition to blood and urine. So they're looking at the history of a horse being doped here. So let's now go on and look at the FEI's original story about Charlotte and her withdrawal, suspension. Let's take a look at the facts. On the 22nd of July 2024, which was a couple of days before the Team GB was due to leave for the Olympics with the horses, the FEI received a video depicting Ms. Dujardin engaging in conduct contrary to the principles of horse welfare. So it would appear that the video came before Charlotte's voluntary withdrawal. This video was submitted to the FEI by a lawyer representing an undisclosed complainant. According to the information received, the footage was already taken several years ago during a training session conducted by Ms. Dujardin at a private stable. Upon receiving the video, the FEI promptly initiated an investigation. And as part of this investigation, Ms. Dujardin, British Equestrian and British Dressage were informed of the allegations. Ms. Dujardin was given a deadline of 5 o'clock Swiss time on the 23rd of July to respond to the allegations. Subsequently, Ms. Dujardin confirmed that she is the individual depicted in the video and acknowledged that her conduct was inappropriate. On the 23rd of July 2024, she requested to be provisionally suspended pending the outcome of the investigations and voluntarily withdrew from the Paris Games, and also confirmed that she will not participate in any competitions pending the outcome of the FEI's investigation. But it was interesting to me at the time how she got a 6-month suspension, not a 3. So that indicated to me that this was a higher level breach of the rules. So now let's look at what the FEI have reported about their recent meeting. FEI stakeholder meeting sets a unified vision for the future of dressage. Unified? With who? What? At the highly anticipated FEI dressage stakeholder meeting, so it was a special one for dressage, which was held in person at the FEI headquarters in Lausanne, Switzerland, 1st of October, experts and representatives from across the sport have reaffirmed the core objectives of dressage and discussed ways of realigning the discipline to reflect these objectives. Yeah, so they have no choice but to be unified on the possibility that riders will, and potentially in our generation, be banned from riding horses at all. But I think it's riding in competition that will go down first. So this was a very serious meeting and they had to act fast because in the Tokyo Olympics, the equestrian phase of the pentathlon has been dropped. I can't see the sport changing fast enough to keep equestrian sport in the Olympics beyond 2028 because, as I said earlier, the Olympic Committee has more power than the FEI. The aim is that through balanced and systematic education, horses are trained and ridden to be calm, supple, flexible, confident, and responsive, fostering a deep and positive connection with the rider. As I just said, is there time for them to make that bigger change, to change their ways? I think, as I said earlier, the solution is to open the floor to ethical riders and to make sure that gets rewarded. The group agreed that these core objectives should be integrated in the FEI rulebook and applied in practice, both while training and competing. This approach emphasizes key qualities such as the freedom and regularity of movement, the ease and lightness of transitions, and the horse's balance. I made 2 videos of both the eventing dressage test at the Paris Olympics and the dressage test, not the special, making comparisons between the highest ranked riders and the lowest, so that you could see the differences in how the horses moved and how the riders rode them, so that you could potentially make some sense of the marking. Although judging dressage is a whole other skill, and I have suggested that the marking is changed to reflect the nuances of the combination's performance. A crucial aspect is that dressage is practiced without tension or resistance, ensuring harmony between horse and rider. Yeah, because the marking system allows for many aspects of a movement, including the accuracy and how the movement is performed. So I think the marking, it's too easy for judges to overlook aspects of the horse's training and development, reflected in the way the horses move. Participants acknowledged the impact of breeding on the evolution of the sport and explored the relationship between judging, training, and riding. So, yeah, in terms of the impact of breeding, as I see it, these horses, these dressage horses, bred for elite level dressage, are becoming much, much more challenging to ride because the horse has to have a massively expressive elastic gait, but the human body cannot stabilize and synchronize on that movement. And to me, I see this is where the restrictions such as tight nosebands, hard hands, are perhaps used to restrain that big movement. They also emphasised the importance of examining the sport holistically by introducing principles of behavioural science and the 5 domains of animal welfare, focusing on the horse's positive physical and mental well-being. Well, how do you mark for that? The Paris 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games showcased the best our sport has to offer in competition. Oh dear. But also brought to light challenges that have prompted us to reflect and reassess in the post-Games period, FEI Secretary General Sabrina Ibanez said. To many, this vision of what dressage should embody may seem self-evident. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just got way out of control and beyond the control of the FEI, either to monitor and control for abuse, to judge and mark for it, and even to recognize when a horse is tense and not coping with their role in the sport. But as highlighted during the meeting, over the years, the discipline has moved away from its traditional purpose. Yes, it has. I'm glad they have recognized that. And this realization requires a necessary realignment to the foundational principles of dressage. Good. Time for change. They've got their work cut out for them. But I think there are some shortcuts to this. One of them is horses worked behind the vertical. Now, in my experience, a horse will drop behind the vertical because it's weak and because the rider is not quite stable and able to maintain stability. I'm talking about micro stability here. But it's the same as for show jumping. If a horse has a pole down, it's penalised. It's less likely to win. So in dressage, if a horse drops behind the vertical at a very high level after years of training, that reflects there's something manifesting there about the training. So if they had, say, for example, horse drops behind the vertical for more than 3 strides, they should lose the mark for that move or most of the mark for it. And this may stop the riders from training behind the vertical and warming up behind the vertical. So they could be a lot more creative with this. FEI Dressage Director Ronan Murphy said, establishing a unified vision is the essential first step in fostering a shared purpose. With this foundation in place, we can now focus on restoring public trust and confidence in the sport. Well, unification of who and what? Our goal is to be aligned and move forward in the same direction. We have clearly defined what we want to see as a sport, and the next step is for all parties to assess how we can adapt our practices and approaches to ensure these standards are met. This effort is not the responsibility of any one group. Oh, they're devolving responsibility as I read it. It is a collective mission for the entire dressage community, and we look forward to engaging with the wider community, especially our national federations. Key points that were addressed during the meeting, action points and next steps. One of the key proposals put forward is mandatory trainer registration. Oh, yes. Training, the training of horses should be regulated. Trainers should be licensed. They should be educated professionals with certification, continuing professional development, and a code of conduct. And potential certification aimed at ensuring accountability and standardization within the discipline. Well, that'll put the cat among the pigeons because many trainers are developed in competition and go on to teach what they know based on their success in competition without having to know anything about muscle conditioning and development, posture, the saddle. So I think there's a few more gurus out there who would be better equipped with more education. The group also committed to defining ethical training methods with an emphasis on increasing transparency and showcasing good practices. Additionally, participants identified the need for a more comprehensive communications plan to better inform and engage with the broader public and stakeholders. Not sure what that's about. Rules revision. Stakeholders expressed support for a thoughtful approach to revising the rules, favouring a comprehensive strategic evaluation based on available research. Good. This will presumably help with the blue tongue issue. This will ensure that all changes are sustainable and beneficial to the sport in the long term. Equine welfare. Participants supported the FEI equine welfare strategy and various actions identified as part of the overall FEI action plan. Collaboration and collective responsibility. The discussions emphasised the importance of collective responsibility and collaboration within the dressage community. Well, they just introduced a noseband tensioning inspection device, and several riders appeared to be unhappy with that because it's something that might upset the horse, but they could be training the horses to accept the protocol and process of having their nosebands examined if they can take them to dizzying heights of passage, piaffe, tempi changes. Those horses should be able to tolerate inspection of their nosebands with a small, inobtrusive device. Participants welcome the opportunity for ongoing and regular dialogue, yes, I bet they do, and expressed their willingness to take part in working groups on key topics. Good, because, yeah, working groups can work, but again, it's almost another way of diluting the issues so that the status quo is arrived at. But in any group, you can't please everybody. So if you're going to please the riders, their point of view may not align with that of the judges. So, for example, as I say, being behind the vertical, and this can be done with technology nowadays, so that being behind the vertical carries a penalty, and the riders might say, no, we don't want that. But I don't mean to be pessimistic, but as long as the groups aren't too big and the horse's welfare is consistently placed first, then that's a very positive step forward. That they need to let others in on evolving the sport. Because, as I said, there will be no horses in competition if this situation continues. Updates will be provided during the session on the FEI's equine welfare strategy at the FEI General Assembly on the 12th of November. There will be further opportunities for discussion at the FEI Sports Forum in April 2025. Note to the editors, the meeting was attended by a diverse group of key stakeholders, including representatives from the International Dressage Riders Club, the International Dressage Officials Club, the International Dressage Trainers Club, good, and the dressage organisers. Also present were the presidents of the European Equestrian Federation and the Pan American Equestrian Confederation, and the FEI president and the chair of the FEI Para Equestrian Technical Committee. Additionally, the FEI Dressage Steward General, FEI Dressage Committee representatives, and members from the FEI Athletes, Paradressage and veterinary committees contributed to the discussions. Well, yeah, as I said, the bigger the group, the harder it is to reach status quo. And yeah, as I read earlier from this report, they appear to be devolving responsibility, accountability. So Why do they, I mean, this group here, appears sufficient to resolve problems arising. But yeah, on the other hand, maybe they want to just go outside of pure dressage for suggestions on how to improve the sport. Things are looking up. Thank you for your comments and thank you for following this important situation. And above all, let's make sure that the horse benefits from it. If you found this episode thought-provoking, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, leave a review. It really helps more equestrians and horse lovers find the podcast. You can also join the conversation on the Horse Saddle Rider YouTube channel. And finally, I'll be giving you more insights into the equestrian world. So be sure to come back and join me so that together we can campaign for better conditions for our sport horses.